Welcome to the ExecMBA podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Bret Leach and Kevin O'Neill. Bret and Kevin are second-year students in our Executive MBA class of 2024, and they are also leaders of the Darden Executive Veterans Student Organization, or DEV, as it is called here at Darden. I recently connected with Bret and Kevin to talk more about their backgrounds, how they decided to pursue an MBA, what led them to Darden, DEV's plans for the upcoming year, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here's my interview with Bret Leach and Kevin O'Neill. Bret, Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Brett.
It's great to have you here. Bret, how's everything going? How are you doing?
Things are going well. I'm actually headed to Finland and Estonia with the program next week, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Absolutely. Have you been to either of those countries before?
I have not. No, I'm pretty excited. It's part of why I picked them. Also, you get a 2-for-1 on that trip.
That's right. Oftentimes you're just going to one country on a global residency, unless you go to the Finland, Estonia global residency. You get two places. There's also a trip to Argentina taking place that same week, and the part-time MBA students and a few executive MBA students, as I understand it, also heading to Italy. So not too shabby.
No, a few people actually are going straight from Estonia to Italy. So
I heard about this. I don't even know how this is possible. We have students going from the Argentina global residency to the Italy global residency, and Finland, Estonia, as noted, to Italy. Man, we gotta have these people on the podcast to find out, how do you even do all that?
Yeah, I'd be
Amazing.
Exhausted.
For sure. Kevin, how are you doing? Are you going on multiple global residencies in the next 2 weeks?
I'm doing well. I am not. So I elected to go the EMBA route and did Spain for the very first go round. But I've also taken advantage of the even though I'm missing out on the Darden global the last global residency period, my wife and I went to Aruba, so we still went internationals, maybe just a little more a little different flavor than doing the tours of the various businesses. But it's a hard choice to make.
Well, that sounds very nice. So y'all are now officially in the elective period of the program, quarter 6, quarter 8, kind of in this sort of transition period. Kevin, what's it feel like to be at this point in the program? You kind of rewind back a year ago, you were just getting started with the program. How does that feel? How does it compare?
It's definitely a different feel. It's noticeable because, you get used to everyone kind of being not only in the same class, and we, I know we rotate sections by semester to really get exposure, so everyone can, in the whole cohort, can have an opportunity to share a classroom together. But it's definitely different where, even from the simple things like we have a Discord chat, and we had the realization that no, we don't just have 3 course channels that everyone is on, but we had to make all of them, and hey, you got to go in and sign it, so there's the noticeable changes, but it is interesting in its own way, because especially for the case format, you get into some of the classes that have a smaller population, and it, I think, lends itself to an even more robust case experience, because you do, for example, I'm in the Sustainable Global Value Chains class, and we have about, I want to say 17 or 20 people in it. So it's significantly less than, say, a 60, 65 person section for the core courses. And it's amazing how much more you really get to dive in on an individual level. And you feel much less like you're taking up I got to get my quick 20 seconds in, make sure I'm not taking up too much time in the discussion, make sure I'm advancing the point. So it's got its pluses and minuses, but you do notice, like, oh yeah, some folks might only be taking 2 courses, and you're like, hey, I haven't seen so-and-so today. Like, yeah, they don't have class on Friday. You'll see them on Saturday. And it is definitely an adjustment.
Bret, how does it feel? Here you are in the elective period. About a year ago, you were starting the program.
Yeah, I mean, time really flies. It goes by so fast. The elective period's been great. I'm really enjoying my electives right now. Taking mergers and acquisitions, entrepreneurship through acquisition and valuations, and they're all really fun and really interesting, but also a lot of work. So I'm excited to knock out those finals and move on to the next set of electives.
That's right. In this program, every couple months, you get new classes. Kevin, what are you taking? You mentioned the operation. I mean, sorry, the supply chain.
Yeah, so I am in valuations, sustainable global value chains. I'm also in ETA as well. So it's which is kind of interesting because ETA and M&A have a lot of overlap. It's just kind of, I'm not in M&A to compare, but from talking to Bret and others, there's a lot of overlap where you're like, yeah, same valuation, maybe different business size, but a lot of the same principles applying. So I really enjoyed it. With that said, I think Bret was probably a kindred spirit, knowing his background. That similar to most of the quarters where I've had a lot of, maybe not all quant, but definitely a quant influence, and then being able to go from there to the qualitative is very enjoyable to me. So being able to tailor that, and I know other folks that felt the exact opposite. My selection criteria was, is there an Excel spreadsheet I could work on in here? Like, I don't live for that, but I prefer it over, say, an extended paper, we'll say. That's just my preference. There are other people I know in the class who very much identify more the poet route, and they're like, get me away from quant at all costs. I did my core, I got my base, but I want to maybe go some of the other more qualitative classes. And I think that's also a beauty to it as well, is we have a good foundation, 6 quarters. It's definitely a fire hose on some portions, but everyone I think is, okay, we got a solid base. Now let's really try and branch out to some folks saying, hey, let me lean right into what I don't do well. Other folks, I would say I'm doing that as well, because I'm still learning a ton, even if it is maybe something I'm interested in. And other folks saying, hey, let me go really expand and get even better. And you really can't go wrong with the fact that you got a Darden from that perspective.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about your respective backgrounds before we get into the sort of general purpose for this conversation, which is to talk more about the Darden Executive Veterans student organization. Bret, tell us a little bit more about you, who you are, what you do, and what you did before coming to Darden.
Yeah. This is a detail that people don't find as interesting as I do, but I grew up in a small historic maritime town on the coast of Maine, and I make sure I tell everybody that. But from there, I went to the Naval Academy and studied ocean engineering. Served 5 years on active duty. The first half as a surface warfare officer on a destroyer, and the second half as a project manager in shipyards. When I got out, I found a small energy company in Houston, Texas. They hired me as their 20th employee. I worked as an analyst on a trade floor and in their business development group for about 10 years, working on natural gas infrastructure deals and LNG supply deals and some energy transition, renewable type deals. So it was all very interesting.
All right. Kevin, tell us a little bit more about your background.
Yeah. So, believe it or not, Bret and I pulled off the Navy takeover of the Darden Executive Veterans Club leadership. So that was pretty successful, although I guess it was a handoff because Jared was also a naval guy. So, yeah, we're continuing that fun tradition. But I went to the University of Michigan for undergrad. I commissioned in the Navy after that, and I was an F-18 weapons systems officer. So conveniently now I don't have to say like Goose, but a little different. I can now say I was like Bob from the more recent Top Gun movie. And that's how I describe it. So I can clarify to people that what my job was. I did that for about 9 years, left active duty in February 21, and took on a role in defense contracting in the greater Washington, D.C. area. So working in a government acquisitions office, and have been doing that. One of the things, leading up to Darden, take the Metro to the Pentagon. sure enough, there's a Darden ad. So that was certainly, I know there's a big presence here, obviously, for the executive program, but also just more holistically, I know it's a very big concentration area for Darden and UVA writ large. But yeah, that was what I was doing there, and thought, hey, that would be a good idea to go pursue what they have.
Brett, I'm wondering, how did you get interested in pursuing an MBA? What led you to say that this is the right next step for me?
I think for me, it came down to the realization that I had certain knowledge and skill gaps that I wanted to fill to help achieve my personal and professional goals. I was lucky enough to have, two separate careers where I learned a lot on the job, but still had those knowledge gaps that I wanted to fill.
Kevin, does that resonate with you? Or are there other reasons you decided to pursue an MBA?
Yeah, I think very similarly, when I was looking to make the transition, I was kind of broadly interested in what's next. Similar to Brett, I was an ROTC student, so all 4 years that I was an undergrad, I had an idea that as long as I didn't do something to mess it up, I knew where I was headed after graduation. But I certainly didn't have it was very much an overwhelming experience when looking to transition as to, okay, what do I want to do, and how can I build out my skills better to continue to hopefully be successful. And one of the things, as I was looking at that, both leading up to the transition and after it, was seeing that similarly, I had a lot of information deficit with the business side of stuff. I didn't really have the opportunity in undergrad to go supplement anything there, and I took some online courses that I was able to look at some basic finance or things of that nature, and I really started to find the interest and the interplay between the technical, similarly, and okay, can I translate this to a broader audience? It doesn't have to just be completely go down the hardcore technical engineering or science route to be interesting work. And if anything, there can be a lot more interest being kind of at that nexus point and understanding both sides of it to really drive success. So I felt like I had a pretty solid background in a variety of different, kind of technical areas. And I thought this would be a really good opportunity to round myself out, both right now and in the here and now and moving forward for whatever comes next.
Brett, how did you get interested in Darden? What led you to say this is the place where I want to do my executive MBA program?
I've been thinking about MBA programs for a decade, and poked around, talked to a lot of different programs, and kind of kept coming back to Darden, but didn't want to take the time off to do a full-time program, and started looking more closely at the executive program, and that's a big part of how I ended up here. And in particular, Darden's kind of famous for its teaching excellence and its strong community and network. And I don't know if it's famous for this, but it's something that I understood to be true, which was a focus on ethics that I really appreciated. So those kind of things kind of helped me realize that Darden was the right fit for me. I also, from a GI Bill perspective, appreciated that it was a state school. It goes a lot further.
Yeah, I appreciate all of those things. I do think Darden has a reputation as being a school, has a reputation in ethics. Ed Freeman, stakeholder theory, all of that is very much part of the firmament here at Darden. And you're right to your point about military benefits. I mean, if you spend some time on our website, if you're 100% eligible for military benefits, you realize, for GI Bill specifically, you realize that historically that's meant that all of tuition, most fees would be covered. If you do the program as a veteran, you also will be receiving a housing allowance that's keyed to the Roslyn location. So financially a pretty attractive option.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kevin, you mentioned seeing some ads on the Metro. What led you to say Darden is where you wanted to be?
I would say they definitely supplemented. I think similar to Brett. Obviously, starting with a broad search and trying to identify, hey, what's the right approach, full time versus a professional format, um, and knew that Darden, obviously based on the reputation and the various rankings, some of the various transition focused social media accounts and stuff that I follow, one of which is run by who at the time was a active Darden full-time student and now is a proud alum, but Mark Delaney running the veteran professional account, and I know he's also got his own startup that he started to try and help with that transition as well. So there was a lot of things drawing me in there. I think one of the big things was especially for Darden and the executive format, that attracted me was being able to stay in the DC area. I didn't have to move. Thankfully, I was stationed in Virginia Beach for the majority of my time on active duty. But I also was trying to balance not just having my wife and I have to pick up and move yet another time to then have to pick up and move yet another time. And so there's a trade-off there, but it was hard to turn down when you took into account all those things from GI Bill, the high quality education and reputation that Darden has, the community it has, and then the geographic location. All those things really came together. And also I know, the part-time program in the second year, that was one of the first things I looked at until I had a conversation with you and really settled on, the executive route would be the way to go for me. So that's kind of how I settled there.
I appreciate that. I mean, having the part-time program, I think it brings people into the process. And what's great about our role is we can help you figure out, is that the right program? Is the Executive MBA program the right program? Once you've decided that you want to work while pursuing your degree, that's where I think our admissions team can be really helpful and kind of view our role as like, we're listening to you, kind of thinking about where you are in your career, what group's going to really challenge and engage you, what schedule might work best for you, all of these kinds of things. And so that's why we have conversations, lots of points of interaction for folks as they go through this process. So, Brett, thinking back again about starting business school, I mean, for most of our executive MBA students, they've been out of school for a while, they're coming back to school. What was the adjustment like as a brand new executive MBA student here at Darden?
It's I don't know if shock's the right word, but you kind of get thrown in the deep end and figure it out. My 15-year college reunion is in a few weeks. So when I started the program, it had been a little while since I had done any schoolwork, let alone part-time. So figuring out that kind of balance and how to manage that workload, the additional workload is an adjustment, but you figure it out.
Kevin, any thoughts on along these lines? I mean, first year, I think for most of our executive MBA students, it probably takes them a few quarters to kind of feel settled in. What was the adjustment like for you?
It was definitely adjustment in a few different ways. One, getting acclimated to the case method, I think, is a unique thing to Darden, as opposed to maybe some other formats, programs, or even outside the scope of just MBA, but just the idea of going back to school. It was very much a different classroom environment, and I think that kind of brings with it also the getting back into the mindset of, oh man, I've got homework, I've got readings, I've got to prepare for class. And the added dynamic of, and whereas I did it in undergrad where I was just a college student, and that was all I had to do, now I've got a full-time job. So it definitely takes a little bit. I think there's a mindset as well, that you kind of come in with, it's a great community, but you're trying to balance that with a motivation that you really want to do well, and balancing that with understanding that, hey, you don't need to completely kill yourself on this. You need to focus on just, I want to have a good takeaway from the class. I want to be able to learn something new, and the focus on learning as opposed to, okay, I need to go get an A on every single thing possible. And that's the only motivation here. It's like, yeah, okay, we got it. You want to do well, but let's actually focus on what you should really worry about, which is taking away something from each class, and doing it at your pace and your level. Was certainly something that took me a little bit to adjust to, because I think I'm so used to, no, there's one goal.
Right. I think at most other points in people's educational experience, very grade directed, grade motivated, right? That's how you judge. Did you do well in the course? What grades you make? A little different when you come back as an executive MBA student. I want to talk about getting comfortable with the case method. Like, was there a breakthrough for you where you realized, like, oh, this is how this works. This is how I can contribute. Is there a point where it became clear how you learned through this approach?
Um, so full disclosure, I did a lot of research, but I missed a very key component of the appeal of Darden when I found out that it was case based after I was admitted. But that actually ended up suiting really well. Uh, when I first sat through a mock case, and it was before LR1, and Yael led it, and it was just, I was like, oh, this is awesome, because this is very much more how I learn, is kind of that interaction, that dialogue back and forth. I definitely think it was probably more so towards the end of Q1, maybe start of Q2, where I think myself and I would say probably more so even just the section or the cohort in general, I think that we all kind of started to understand, okay, it's, yes, there's a participation, again, there's a participation aspect to your performance, but it's not a volume game to do well there. And so I think as we got more comfortable with the idea that, hey, the point of this is to have a conversation amongst the class to enhance learning, and it's not just rapid fire responses, that for myself, and I think again for the whole class, you kind of learn, but I'd say it takes some repetitions to go through a couple online and then OGRs and even some different dynamics there, to really get comfortable with it. But it was mainly just okay, I've seen this enough times that I feel like I'm starting to understand what is value added versus maybe, hey, not as much, or how to go about it the right way. But not sure if Bret feels different.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was sort of funny to watch during LR1 when we all were kind of thrown into the case method together. Every time a professor asked a question, I think every hand went up as everyone tried to participate. And then as time went on, people got into a rhythm and got to know each other and would even help each other through the case method process, whether that was on learning teams to prep for class, because sometimes you just don't have the time to get fully prepared. And so you rely on each other, but also in class. If other students felt like somebody hadn't been called on just because of the pacing of the class, they would refer the professor to that person. People have sent messages to each other with the answers if they got cold called, and things like that, to try to help each other out and work as a team to succeed.
Yeah, thank you for indulging the question. I think it is part of the adjustment for people, right? It's a new learning experience. Most people are much more used to the didactic lecture-based. Faculty member comes in and says, here are all the things you need to know about this. And case method's a little bit flipped from that. You do a lot of that technical understanding and development outside of class. You come to class to test your understanding. And so it's all about application. And so that's different for people. And it takes a little while to get used to. So I appreciate the additional color. I mentioned the goal, the purpose of this conversation. We have, it's an annual tradition. We have the leaders of student organizations on the podcast to talk about the organizations, what led them to get involved in a leadership role. This is our conversation about the Darden Executive Veterans Student Organization, what previously used to be known as the Veteran Executive Students at Darden Student Organization, gone through a rebrand. It's now the Darden Executive Veterans Student Organization. So, Bret, tell us a little bit more about what this organization is all about.
Yeah, the organization really is here to provide a community and support for the veterans in the program, as well as prospective students. We try to make sure that Kevin and I try to make sure we're available to talk to candidates to help them understand what Darden is like and understand what the application process is like and how to succeed through that process, as well as have get-togethers for current students, act as a liaison between the administration and the veterans, and kind of assist the career development group at Darden with any veteran specific jobs or careers.
Kevin, anything you'd want to add about Dev?
The only thing is, I guess by name you'd think it's only veteran, but there's obviously, the full gamut of military community, both, folks on active duty, as well as, military affiliated spouses that may be leveraging GI Bill or other VA type benefits. And so we definitely try and keep it, as inclusive an environment, and also for anyone who's interested in just being an ally to kind of the veteran community, including them as well. But definitely I would say the focus is, the bulk of our interaction is probably along the lines of what Brett's talking about, of, just trying to be as helpful as possible, supportive within the community, and helping with any of, if we can relieve some admin burden, we're familiar with it and we appreciate when other people help us out. So we try and do the same.
I know a lot of our clubs and organizations, now that we have a part-time program, are also in the process of sort of building connection across part-time MBA and executive MBA. Darden Executive Veterans historically was focused on executive MBA students, launched and created at a time where we only had executive MBA students. We now have executive MBA and part-time MBA students. Brett, how are y'all building these connections with part-time students? I don't know if you also engage with MSBA students, the other professional degree population we have up here, but any thoughts along these lines?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one day at a time, and I think those like happy hours and various social events help a lot with that, as well as any email communications that go to all students. So we have a MBA career conference for veterans coming up in October in Atlanta, and keeping that communication up and engagement up with the part-time and executive students is a big part of that.
Kevin, anything you'd like to share?
The other thing, Brett and I kind of chuckled because you mentioned a rebrand. That has been a topic of conversation recently, to make sure that, because I think the goal is to try and align it so that the clubs are inclusive, independent of format, executive or part-time or even MSBA BA. But we are looking at ways to rename. We haven't nailed anything down yet, but with the intent to really expand that scope, so folks don't feel like, oh, that's only for the executive students or that sort of thing. And we're also trying to align that to create a little more relationship even to the residential program with the Darden Military Association. So I think there's a big focus there, and we realize it can be difficult to align schedules even between the two executive classes, let alone the part-timers. But we're definitely trying to do what we can there to find ways to bring people together.
Well, Brett, I wonder what the organization has planned for the coming months. I mean, you're 100% correct that there's a lot happening in the background, a lot around community and just bringing people together. But you have the Veterans Conference. Anything else that you're looking forward to? Just circled on your calendar?
The biggest thing coming up next is this career conference that we're all pretty excited about. Kevin and I are working on a happy hour before we go into the holidays. We'll see if we can pull that off in November. And then there is a Service Academy Career Conference in November as well in Dallas that we'll put the word out here for shortly.
Kevin, anything dev related that you're looking forward to, that you're excited about?
And there's one more thing actually next week up in New York, the Military Veterans, another org that has a networking conference going on 28th and 29th. So I'm going, and I think there's a few others in the club that are also going. But yeah, everything else like Brett said, we're just trying to keep everything on schedule or get it on the schedule.
Also, for some of our listeners, these kinds of large conferences, this may be the first time that they're hearing about them. Um, how do you see that? How do you see them fitting into the career process for folks who may be already transitioned, veteran out there already working in the world, or people who are in the process of transitioning out of the military to the civilian world? Brett, any thoughts here?
Well, I think that one of the great things about the Executive MBA program, um, and I'm sure the part-time program as well at Darden, is that there's a real focus on career development, and that's incredibly helpful to have career coaches who are there to support you as you develop a resume and come up with a personal pitch and search for different opportunities, whether that's within your current career or if you're transitioning to something new, that might be coming out of the military, or it might be, transitioning from energy to finance or things along those lines. And having those people there to help you is incredibly helpful and valuable.
Kevin, you mentioned you're going to one of these conferences just next week. How do you see the conferences fitting into the career process for working professional students?
I think that one of the biggest things, and Brett had mentioned the career services team, but we do have done a number of professional development courses, and they highlight, really independent of your career goal, whether it's climbing, completely switching, or you're just kind of curious about various different industries. One of the best ways to learn that is through networking. I'll be the first to admit that as I was making the career transition off active duty in the first case, that was almost a 4-letter word to me because I just didn't like the idea of that. It seemed very transactional. And I think especially for the military community, that is not an uncommon thing. But I think it's also interesting because often word of mouth is, and reputation is what you are working to maintain or build as you forge relationships on active duty or in the military. And you might not actively go out to try to network, but you almost inherently do it. So I think it's more of a human nature thing. From this perspective right now, really it's just interesting to go gain exposure to people in different industries, gain different ideas. And you might be able to bring something back talking to someone who works in finance or consulting to say, I'm going to, in Brett's case, I'm going to solve something in the natural gas area, or hey, I'm going to solve a defense problem that, I just learned about this new thing. So you really don't know what relationships you'll make, and you don't really know until you go out and, have those conversations. But it can always benefit you. And then just realistically in the long run, having the ability to say, hey, I met you at this conference, I'm really interested in what you're doing, that may end up spurring another opportunity you didn't know that you were interested in.
Yeah, I'd just add real quick. I think, that's a great point, Kevin. The networking piece is so key and something that in the military we are very uncomfortable with, feel like it's slimy. But it's really just being curious and going out and talking to people who do something that you're interested in and want to learn more about. And I think that's pretty fundamental. And what's great is that Darden alumni are so open to it. I've reached out to so many different people who didn't know who I was, and just because I'm at Darden and they went to Darden, they happily had a conversation with me and answered questions that I had about their jobs and their industries.
Well, it's a huge part of the career process for any student at Darden is building these relationships, leveraging those relationships potentially to your next opportunity. And I love your point about curiosity. That's really what you're doing. You're asking people, tell me about your career. How'd you get here? What's the experience like working at this company? Any advice for someone who's considering this kind of role? Anybody else you think I should speak to? You're asking a lot of questions. And really, well, as you have these conversations, you're building relationships with people that you're going to stay in touch with and help them and share with them how the process is going as you move forward. Hey, I talked to this person. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm also going to have this meeting with this other person. I mean, it's just building relationships. But you're right. When you say networking, it hits people in a very kind of transactional way, and people don't feel comfortable with it at all. So, Brett, I wonder what you're looking forward to, just generally, in the coming months. Any things that you are excited about?
I'm definitely excited about my trip to Finland and Estonia. But on top of that, I'm honestly looking forward to my electives coming up. I was able to get a bunch of classes that I really wanted to take, and I'm excited to learn about those things. And kind of enjoy the last several months of being at Darden. That said, I won't mind the reduction in workload when we do graduate in May. That will be kind of nice.
Is there one elective that when you saw the elective lineup, was one elective that you said, I have to be in that class?
There were a few, but there was one in particular, and it's a brand new elective, and I'm finishing it up right now, and that's entrepreneurship through acquisition. I honestly would recommend that class to people, even if they aren't interested in acquiring a small business. It covers so much ground, from raising capital to capital structure to small business operations, and it kind of ties everything together, I think, pretty nicely. And I think people will find value in that, even if they don't go acquire a business.
Evan, how about you? What are you looking forward to? Obviously, you got a career conference in your not so distant future, but what else?
That's a good question. I feel like my wife and I, every time we look at the calendar, we realize that there's still no white space on there. I'm definitely looking forward to, though I feel I'll miss out at both Argentina and Finland and Estonia. Sound like fun trips. I think that'll, in the near term, be a nice little interim between the Milvet conference to get a little bit of just a reset, because I will be going along with Brett to the Atlanta conference as well. And in the not so distant future, I'll finish my trend of finding a way to make a global residency line up, on my own terms. But my wife and I will be going to Rio in February. So we'll just miss the Carnival crowd, which hopefully is, it's a little more subdued. But I've never been to South America before at all either. So kind of along those same lines from a travel standpoint, hitting something that I haven't been able to do before.
It's a nice place to be. We went there back in November 2019 with our Executive MBA class of 2021. We were in Sao Paulo and in Rio. And nice to be there in February, counter season, go from cold to warm. It was great. You'll have a fantastic time. I wonder, same question for you that I asked Brett. Is there a class, like when you looked at the elective lineup, you said I had to be in this class? I got to make sure that I'm in this particular course.
Trying to think through what my bids were. It ended up working out quite well. That, and I think they tell everybody that, like, hey, you're likely to get into your electives. It would very much be the exception. If you didn't, I definitely think the project management one with Yael, I think it'll be an interesting subject matter, but she's also just very much an awesome teacher. That I was like, okay, to a certain extent, she will make whatever subject matter interesting to me because she's such a good person to learn from. And I was also really interested in J-term course, the behavioral decision making with Manel. I think that's going to be a really, really cool course to build on our core DA.
Yeah, I will say I've heard from people who've taken both those classes that they love them. Behavioral decision making comes up quite often. People just like, I had people come out of that class saying that is the best class they took at Darden. And that's, you're talking 10 days. J term is literally 10 days from between New Year's and MLK Day. Just amazing. Manel, friend of the podcast, he's been on Office Hours. He helped us out with Darden before Darden. Manel Bossells, for those of you who are Googling or trying to look this person up, definitely somebody worth knowing. So, a last question for you, Bret. Piece of advice, something you would encourage our prospective student listeners to consider as they think about their own MBA journeys?
I think for prospective applicants, I would advise getting involved in your community and maybe taking on some leadership roles. I think especially if you're coming out of the military and you don't feel that same sense of purpose in your career or service, it's a good opportunity to get involved and serve again, and I think build the right kind of skill set that I think Darden's probably looking for, which are people that want to serve and want to lead and want to be members of their community. And then I think as a student, or for students or prospective students, I would kind of go back to something Kevin said earlier, which is really focus on what you want to learn and take out of the program. Don't be so concerned with your grades per se. I think the time flies in the program. It goes by so fast. If you're curious about entrepreneurship or want to understand that the key thing you want to understand is economics, like focus on those things, ask those questions, connect with your classmates about those things, reach out to faculty and staff, and don't wait for them to reach out to you per se. I think people are always interested to talk to you about the things that you're interested in. And it's not that there's a rush, but it's just such a great opportunity to really focus on the things that you want to take away from the program. And just don't let it slip by.
I appreciate that. That intention is really important, particularly when you're doing a program like the Executive MBA program, 21 months, start to finish. Things move really quickly. To Kevin's point earlier, there's not a lot of downtime. Like you're going to go from quarter to quarter to quarter, and next thing you know, you wake up and you're moving into quarter 8, and oh my gosh, we just got a few more months, and then we'll finish up here. So really being clear about what you want to get out of this experience, what your priorities are, and trying to maximize the experience as much as you can, get as much out, meet as many people as you can. Super important. Kevin, same question for you. A piece of advice that you would share with our prospective student listeners?
I'd say definitely for prospective students, one of the biggest things, kind of that advice on networking, I think starts really even just as part of learning what the right option for the individual person is. So not feeling beholden to one format or another. Talk to folks in the residential program, talk to folks in the part-time program, the executive program. Don't feel like you need to, preemptively self-select to one thing or another. And yeah, folks are busy, but people are way more happy to help. When someone reaches out and asks me if I can tell them, hey, what was your experience like, whether it's transition, joining the program, going through the admissions process, what have you. I'm already a talker, so they'll certainly get an earful, probably regret jumping in on it. But I feel like that in most of my interactions when I'm the person seeking someone out to learn from them, just like Bret said, you're genuine in that, and people are more than happy to give you their time. Even if it's only 30 minutes to really help you because they were previously in your shoes. And I think it's easy to forget that. It's very intimidating to say like, hey, I'm going to reach out and bother somebody to ask them about it. But really it is not a bother. Folks are more than happy to give them info just to make sure people have, the best, or can make the best decision and have the best info. And if you don't do that outreach, you're inherently going to put yourself at an information deficit. and you really don't have to. And then, hopefully when they do start up, like you've mentioned and Brett mentioned, time does really fly by. I can barely believe, we went down to Charlottesville last month to welcome the new class of 25, doing LR1, and we all kind of stopped and looked around for a second. We're like, holy, that was a year ago. That went by really, really quickly. But also I hope folks realize it does go quickly. So really lean into it and, embrace the challenge while it's there. Take advantage of the opportunity if there are, hey, 3 tough classes, but I think I can take away something from all 3 of those. Don't be scared of that and just really lean into it.
Brett, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been great talking with you. And best of luck to Deb in the months ahead. Exciting career conferences, and I'm sure it sounds like y'all got a happy hour or 2 in your future as well. So thank you again.
Thank you, Brett.
Thanks, Brett. Really appreciate it.
And that was my interview with Bret Leach and Kevin O'Neill, 2 second-year students in our Executive MBA class of 2024 and leaders of the Darden Executive Veterans student organization. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We could reach that exec, that's ExecMBA at darden.virginia.edu. Till next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.